Hi, my name's David Gregory, political science major and political junkie and nerdy guy who has fascination with everything. I wanted to talk about the problems with disseminating information in the modern age. The information bombardment we get and the effect it has on us to hold an objective truth, which honestly is crucial for us as a society, any way you look at it, no matter what political spectrum you are. Having an objective truth is what keeps us from sliding off the rails, and I think we're kind of sliding off the rails a little bit. So um, a lot of this just comes from being able to do the work it takes to find the truth, because the truth is usually relatively easy to find. It requires a little work, but that's where everybody steers away, is a little work. Um, and that's the problem with the easy button, and I think that everybody's gotten used to pushing the easy button. And that's a problem, because the easy button just, it leads to problems. Case in point, the environment. Because of our tendency to want to be a little more comfortable and things to be a little easier, we mass produce. And we mass produce so we don't have to go into the woods and hunt and trap and do the things necessary, get up at the butt crack of dawn to go plow the fields. Those things that are necessary to live like that. That's hard. So instead we mass produce things, and we send food in, and we store food in large storage places we call grocery stores, and we keep that food for a while. And in order to keep that food, so you could go quickly to go get that food, they have to put a bunch of chemicals into the food. That keeps the food long enough for it to sit on a shelf for you to go get, because we're not doing what we were intended to do, which is produce food. And that's, a really utopian fantasy to think that we're going to jump into that. So, that's not realistic. So we're not going to entertain that notion that everybody should go and grab a pitchfork and hoe their backyard up and start farming and quit their job. But that's kind of my point, is our tendency as humans to push that easy button on certain things leads to big problems. And the problem with keeping food on a shelf is, even if you pump it full of chemicals, and they do, you still can't keep it forever. It's still going to go bad. It has a shelf life. So that food that doesn't sell, for one reason or another, gets tossed. And roughly that's estimated at half. So half the food produced is tossed, buried, thrown away. And they can't give it away to like homeless, because what would be the incentive to have a store if you're giving your items away? What would be the incentive to purchase the items? So it presents a problem there. But that easy button presents an escalating situation. So back to disseminating information. We do the same thing when it comes to information we receive. So we attempt to disseminate that information quickly. We want to push the easy button. So things pop up constantly, and we are, myself included, everybody is. And we're bombarded with just a barrage, depending on what you like and get, where your political affiliation of political media, ads, of different opinions, of advertisements, of just different people trying to pull your mind in a different direction and give you information really quickly so you can scan it really quickly. And they're trying to bait you into clicking and digging a little deeper and then to their item. And in that frenzy, we tend to research the things that are kind of irrelevant, and if we're going to spend money on it, we'll research it. So if we're going to buy something from Amazon, we might look at 4 or 5 different items of that item to see if there's a cheaper item or where it comes from or whatnot. We do that a lot. But when it comes to politics, besides going and pushing the easy button and going to a site like Snopes, which some people are starting to do, which is okay, nobody does the research. And when you don't do the work, you kind of get that effort. So, what if we push the easy button a lot? We don't want the easy button pushed in certain situations. So I mean, what if your mechanic pushed the easy button and used duct tape instead of bolts? You know, or what if your painter, you push the easy button and instead of using paint, he used some weird clay mix that just made you out. You get what I'm saying? I mean, there's certain things that we absolutely would not accept that they use the easy button on, like shampoo. What if they pushed the easy button while making your shampoo and had a bad chemical reaction on your scalp or your lotion? They're very serious about these things and they're very scientific about these things. But when it comes to the information that you receive on global temperatures, you're going to hear a skewed version, one side or the other, about what's really happening, and that eliminates objective truth. And objective truth is honestly what everybody needs to grasp, because on one side, it's scary where we're heading, but it's not impossible. And it's not as perilous as a lot of people are making it out to be, and the world's not ending tomorrow. On this side, things are happening, and there are long-term patterns that can show you from 30 years ago. For this side, claiming that every hurricane is caustic linked to climate change, or every storm system, or a bunch of storm systems, or an active storm season, or a warm season, is necessarily linked to climate change. That's impossible because you have to take climate change as studied in 30-year blocks. So you can't take a storm and tie it into a 30-year study. It's impossible. You know, weather is different than climate for that reason. So if you're studying a hurricane, you're studying weather, not climate. If you're studying the pattern of hurricanes over 30 years, you are studying effects of climate, weather patterns within that. So you can then tie that into there. So did you see an increase in 30 years? But these are things you have to research and do, and not just necessarily take at face value. That being said, a lot of people have done plenty of research. There's evidence. So for the other side to sit there and just, usually the people over here or on this side, let's face it, I know where you live. I've lived where you live. You live in Arizona and Oklahoma, and you live in places that aren't necessarily seeing the impacts that people are seeing in coastal regions and people are seeing in mountain regions in the West. So your perspective is your perspective. But there's numbers, and like I always like to say, you know, numbers don't lie, but people do. So the numbers are there. Before, what I learned to cite my professor Reinbold is 30-year patterns. And before 1980, you could track the cooling and the warming trends of the ocean. And they do naturally warm in cycles, and there are different cycles. So you could track these trends, and you can trace them to both solar output and El Nino pattern. You know, so that's pretty well established. So from what I understand, I wasn't even in school or anything back then. I was doing other things. But from what I understand is if you go back to like 98 and you ask somebody, is man responsible for climate change or any warming patterns, or they would have said, well, there's no evidence to support that. And that was true. So you build upon that because that's what science does, is you disprove hypothesis, you keep hypothesis going. And around 2000, you can take all those numbers and throw them out the window. They don't matter because the CO2 emissions and the temperature rate has moved beyond the pattern that we were able to trace and gone on an obvious trajectory. So you can quantify that, you can look at that. But without being able to properly disseminate that information, which requires work. I mean, come on, man. You know, everything you try to do half-ass is bad. Look at your furniture. Your furniture that's mass-produced and made really cheap out of particle board. Is it going to last? Hell no. You don't want lazy in your furniture. Surely not on your brakes on your car, or, you know. Hell, I hear people bitching about minimum wage for McDonald's workers. You don't want lazy on your McDonald's, you know, but you're more than content to take that information at face value without questioning motive. Countless things that I've seen are just bullshit and flagrant bullshit. And they're posted as fact, and people buy it and they believe it, and now everybody's running around with their own objective truths. So where's reality lies? Because reality lies in objective truth, and there's no reality without objective truth. So what do you do? Where do you go with that? You know, we got to quit pushing the easy button all the time. Sometimes the easy button's nice. You've had a long week, you're tired, you don't want to cook dinner, you order a pizza. You push the easy button. Sometimes the easy button's not nice. Information about politics. Learn it. Go study it. Go read about it. You know, learn about things like the iron triangle and learn how it works. But without looking into it, the more you talk, the worse it sounds and the more harm you're doing to other people. Because people who don't know that information rely on people to give them good information. And that's bad. So if you have information or you know how, do something like I'm doing, make a video about it, or, you know, explain to somebody how to do research, or, you know, try to guide them in a direction where they can do their own thinking. Because a lot of the things that you're upset about that people are unwilling to grasp, and you're upset that they don't understand why this is important, or they don't understand why this is dangerous. They don't know. That comes from a lack of education. So until they start reading, and it kind of goes down to that, like if somebody was quitting drugs. They can't quit drugs because you tell them to quit drugs. They have to want to quit drugs. So this is the same thing. You can't teach somebody something they don't want to learn. They have to want to learn things. So you have to kind of spark something in them, and sometimes that's not going to work. But if we don't come to some sort of objective truth, where are we at? You know, it's scary. So, you know, it's simple. Do your work. Everybody. Quit pushing the damn easy button. You know, I had to learn that in life. The easy button got me nowhere. Don't push the easy button. Do a little research. Think for yourself.